I like how you link this question with laïcité, because I think there is a link. We can see in Guadeloupe or Martinique, which are located in the Caribbean, when they open their tap water, for example, we can see black water coming from their tap water. This is France. This is also part of the French territory. In the south of France, there are some mayors who prefer to pay a tax for not respecting those 20% social housing. Yeah.
Welcome to Muslims in Europe, Professor Kawtar. How are you doing?
I'm good, alhamdulillah. And you?
I'm good as well. Thank you very much. So, Professor, you are a professor in Cambridge, I believe, correct?
No, I'm a lecturer at the University of Liverpool.
Liverpool, yes. So can you talk about yourself a little bit, like your background? What's your background and what's your connection with France?
Yeah, so I'm French. I'm French-Moroccan. I was born in France, raised in France, grew up in France. I studied my entire life in France until the PhD. So I got my doctoral degree in France. And then I tried to find a job in academia in France, but because of the studies the topics that I decided to study was very controversial in France, especially the way I decided to study them. Then it was very difficult for me to find a job, and then that's why I decided to be more interested in Anglo-American academia. So I started in my master to work on Muslim communities, Islamophobia. So it was a long time ago because it was in master, but I already noticed that it was very difficult to do it. So I decided to do a PhD, maybe less linked to Muslim communities and more linked to urban segregation, that I thought would be easier to study. It was easier to study, I have to say, compared to Islamophobia, but still, because, when you highlight topics such as ghettoization or the transparency of racial data and religious data, the inefficiency of governmental politics and measures, all these was also difficult to highlight. But then when I wanted to come back to Islamophobia, it was after 2015, so after the Charlie Hebdo attack and the Bataclan attack, and I saw how important it was to study these topics. So I decided to come back to Islamophobia, but definitely from an Anglo-American perspective and not from a French academic perspective.
Professor, can you tell me a little bit about, because you studied about the French ghettoization and urbanization, how true is this these policies implemented in because when we spoke about it, you said like there are 3 different cities that you studied. One is Paris and a few other cities. So what have you found in your research paper?
So urban planning segregation in French cities directly relate to my doctoral work and publication. So it was a long time ago because I worked on residential segregation primarily in 3 French cities located in east of France. So Besançon, Mulhouse, and Strasbourg. And in France, we used to call the underprivileged areas zone urbaine sensible, ZUS, which could be translated as troubled urban areas. So you can see that there is already a stigmatizing element here, just in the name, because they talk about troubled areas. And these areas were classified by French policies in the early 80s and ended up maybe in the mid 2010s or something like that. Mm-hmm. And for privileged urban areas, there is no zoning to objectify these degrees, their degree of comfort. Mm-hmm. So accordingly, neighborhoods that are in great difficulty are more clearly defined than highly privileged areas, which ultimately limits the possibility of measuring the gaps between the two extremes. So, for example, the very rich enclaves and the very poor ones.
Yeah, with these social classes, are they racially segregated, you mean, or are they... Mm-hmm.
That's the problem in France, because when we decide to work on those kind of topics, because we don't have access to racial, religious data, when we decide to work on ghettoization, urbanization, segregation, we can only work through social categories, statistics. So it's very difficult to see if, for example, there are ghettos. We don't know, like, there is a debate in academia where they say there is no French ghettos in the same way as American-style ghettos, because, for example, the American ghettos are Black American ghettos, and they say that it's not comparable with French zone urbaine sensible, for example, because Black Americans can sometimes represent 90% of the residents. But for us in France, we will never be able to know such statistics. We will never be able to have that kind of statistics. We only have data that is that show French citizenship. So either you are French or you are non-French. For example, in the census, I am French, and there is no possibility to know that I am also a brown Muslim woman. So, for example, if a lot of people who look like me live in the same area, and let's say we are 90% of us in the French census, we will still be appear as French citizen. Mm-hmm. So we don't know if we are white or black or brown, and that's why it's very difficult to say that there are French ghettos. But if you let alone the quantitative data and you go on the ground, you apply a qualitative approach, and you go on the ground, you do observation, you talk with people, you will notice that there are French style ghettos in France, and you will notice that there is some problematic issues that need to be tackled in a more serious way, more efficient way from urban planning policies, and it's not possible to seriously take into account race or religion to discuss this type of issues.
When you said French-style ghettos, what do you mean by French-style ghettos? Because you contrasted that with American-style ghettos. French-style, like, do you mean like ghettos in France, or French-style like a completely different structure?
It's a good question. I would say both, maybe, because obviously we can say that there are French ghettos if we go underground, but they are very different from the American-style ghettos. For example, the ghetto in France will never include individual houses, and in American ghettos, Black American ghettos, we have a lot of individual housing. So, for example, the individual house is the ultimate dream for French people, you know, with the garden, etc. And you can see this kind of housing type in American ghettos. But even if they have the maybe housing dream for French people, they still are people who are part of a deprived category with a lot of difficulties. It could be associated with health difficulties, food difficulties, delinquency, a lot of problems, and it does. At the end of the day, what we can say is that the housing is not anymore the priority. It's not because we live in big bars in France, or towers in France for the French style ghetto, or in housing individual housing ghetto for American ghetto. At the end of the day, it's who we put inside those buildings that matter. And if these people are part of a very precarious category, then we need to focus more on people-based policies instead of building-based policies.
Mm-hmm. So these ghettos are, maybe I didn't get you properly. These ghettos are primarily French citizens, like at least categorized by France. Are they French citizens or are they non-French citizens, like from the data that you have collected? And secondly, like, are these designated, the government provides them with, allocates housing for them? Because I know that in France that the government allocates housing for people who struggle.
Yeah. I mean, we can have ghettos with a lot of foreigners, so non-French citizens. But the particularity for the French case is that there is a diversity of nationality. It won't be, we won't focus only on one type of nationality. It's a very various one. But when it's French citizens living in ghettos, they are in great majority part of a very stigmatized minority group, such as Arabs, Black people, so brown Black people in great majority. And that's why we will not be able to identify them as such, like Black French ghetto or Arab brown French ghetto, but they can, we can notice them if we go just on the ground.
So how does it affect the minority population, ghettoization of when you put minorities in a certain um, demographic, like a geographical location? How does it affect them? Is it because of diversity when they're not interacting with the uh, is there a hierarchy? Let me ask you this question. Like, is there a hierarchy when you put this diverse group in one area, or is it like they put white French in a different part of ghettos, and then the other population in different kinds of ghettos? Does it happen?
For example, if we focus on Paris, we know that the most famous areas with a high concentration of poverty, minority groups, violence, ghettoization, and despair are located in what we call the Parisian banlieue. But the term banlieue, if we only focus on the INSEE and the definition of INSEE. INSEE is the National Institute of Statistics and Economic Studies, which conducts the population census in France. And if we focus only on this definition, or even on the historical meaning, the banlieue only refers to all the spaces that surround a city. Mm-hmm. So in the Greater Paris region, for example, we have, it includes obviously the city of Paris with the 20 boroughs or 20 arrondissements, and also the banlieue, the suburb of Paris, which comprises the three departments of Hauts-de-Seine, Seine-Saint-Denis, and Val-de-Marne. And we call it the proche banlieue, the inner suburb, because there is also the outer one. And if, for example, we also focus on the common language meaning of a banlieue, it will refer more to those spaces of despair, inequality, deprivation, etc. Mm-hmm. And for the Parisian case, we know that the Seine-Saint-Denis, which is located in the northeast of Paris, represents the most precarious department in the entire France. Mm-hmm. So this area is known for aggregating many indicators of poverty and exclusion, and young people in great majority are affected by unemployment, school dropping, delinquency, stuff like that. And therefore, if we gather all people with difficulties, obviously it will be very difficult to be able to go beyond that and to be able to have access to other opportunities, prestigious areas like in the city center of Paris. And some of them never leave their banlieue, although they live very close to Paris. For example, I'm not from Paris, but when I go to Paris, I like visiting the city center. And I remember when I interviewed some Parisian people, but for another topic, for Islamophobia, I asked Muslim women if who live in the banlieue, if like what are the spaces that they avoid or use, and they told me that they avoid going to the city center because for them it's an area that represents a high potentiality to face Islamophobia. So at the end of the day, we have clear social tension and geographical tension and division. And this is not the definition of social mixing as we can see them in, for example, urban planning documents. We see in those urban planning documents that there is a real will to combat division and segregation and ghettoization through social cohesion or social mixing. It's part of the French policy. Mm-hmm. Very French centralized policy, because, for example, in the UK where I live, it's a bit less like this. We respect the plurality of communities and the fact that some communities live among themselves. We respect this kind of pattern and configuration in cities, which is was not the case in France, and is not the case in France. At least in the urban document. But if we look at the laws, the measures, those documents more seriously, we can criticize them. For example, there is a law called SRU, SRU, so it's Solidarity and Urban Renewal, Solidarité et Renouvellement Urbain. And this law targets 20% of social housing in each municipality. It means that each municipality needs to have at least 20% of social housing to combat ghettoization and to foster social mixing. So when you read that law, you can think that, oh, it's a good thing. It's a good thing because 20%, it's a decent statistic, I would say. So in the symbolic, it's good, but if you look at it more closely, you will see that in that law there is nothing linked to the exact location of those 20% of social housing. So it means that in a city, if you can say, like the mayor can say that my city is a good city because we have 20% of social housing, but maybe they are all located in one area that is very ghettoized, and we will not be able to see a clear social mixing after that. So the law does not say that we need to have these 20% social housing scattered proportionally in the entire city. So at the end of the day, if you want to put all this housing in a specific area, a deprived area, then we will not see. And actually, in the south of France, it is known that there are some mayors who prefer to pay a tax for not respecting those 20% social housing. Yeah, so they prefer to pay a tax instead of seeing deprived categories living in the upper market classes categories.
So, my question is also about the white ghetto neighborhoods. Are there any white ghetto neighborhoods? Like, is there a segregation with the white people from? Because I have seen Saint-Denis as well, Saint-Denis. Sorry for my French pronunciation. But then I also went to somewhere in the city center. I'm not sure with the map, but like there was a park, and I was walking through a park, and all I could see is just white people who put their tents inside a park. I felt like it was illegal, but then it was just white people. So Saint-Denis is like all diverse. So is there a French white ghetto, let's say?
Obviously, they are, but it's very difficult to highlight them with specific facts. As I said, we have no data on race, so it's very difficult to say we have white ghettos, etc.
But when the government segregates people, because the government allots people towards, like, let's say, housing, right? So is there? I mean, the government decides, the officer decides. So is there, even though there's no data, have you felt as a researcher, have you felt like there's these kind of ghettos where the officers decide to put certain people in?
It's also linked with socioeconomic conditions, right? So we have for this white ghetto, let's say, there will probably be rich ghettos, right? Located in rich areas.
It was Bois de Venice? Vessene? Bois de Vessene.
Bois de Vincennes?
Bois de Vincennes, yes. That's where I was.
I in the 16th arrondissement of Paris, or this kind of areas. But yeah, that would be. There is probably a link with social categories and race, but it's very hard to highlight it with facts. But those wealthy ghettos, it's what we call gated communities. So there are ghettos that are very closed. So you will see fences, or very difficult to access, even more difficult to access than the deprived ones. So we have a specific type of ghetto called gated communities. And obviously, in the rich areas, there are probably also a specific type of people and race living in those areas. So it means that there are, it's well known in the literature, it's documented that there are some discriminatory practices when you want to access a decent housing when you are not white. And then these can be included in the outcome of white rich ghetto and brown and black poor ghettos.
So there are these kind of ghettos, simply saying. Okay. So how can you tackle this situation? Yeah, let's start with the.
So as I said, we have laws, urban planning, policies, etc. But these policies that are implemented in certain deprived areas very often does not take into account the real desire and needs of the residents. So in my opinion, there are only performative policies and laws and measures. And these policies can sometimes spend millions on improving the facade of the degraded building that we can find in these areas, instead of focusing on the reality of people. As I said earlier, we need people policies, people-based policies offering kind of territorialized transversal logic, including actions around the residents and also their dignity. We need to take into account the dignity of these people, and also requires qualitative studies and a real consideration of these people and in these areas who have plenty of knowledge, plenty of added values, plenty of ideas about their own residential areas and how exactly put in place actions to improve them. So just talk with these people and combat the fact that these people, these residents of these areas, are most of the time defined by the gaze of others, of the dominant groups, of the mainstream media, and we just need to listen to them and take into account their real needs and ideas to be able to help and focus on a more mixing and less divided cities and country, I would say.
Mm-hmm. So you technically would say challenging the laïcité model itself.
Yeah, absolutely. Like they can be included in that. That's totally possible.
So the public must elect, or the public must gather around leaders who would challenge these, or is that what you're saying? Or there need to be more academic papers that criticize and show. So do you feel like changes should come from from the layman, or from the academics to criticize? Which would you suggest? Because
obviously, so academics will be able to raise awareness and conduct studies and also bring.
You yourself are an academic, but then because of the censorship that was there, you had to leave France. So if the academics are not going to stay, so who are you? My question is, how do you make changes if the academics themselves feel constrained?
Yeah, I agree with you, but still we have to challenge French academia on specific topics. For example, why in French academia it's not possible to see a veiled Muslim woman being an academic. It's a question that we need to think of. Why we cannot study specific studies, especially when we are part of the concern group. For example, for Muslim researchers, it's very difficult for them to find a position in academia when it is about studying and teaching Islamophobia, Muslim identity, but even those connected topics such as urban segregation. And but we still need to challenge it, and I think academics needs to continue to raise awareness and be able to conduct those studies, and also try to be able to provide some expert analysis for helping the decision makers to provide better answers. For example, I conducted research, but it was at the European level, so it was not even at the French level, on a city located in north of France, which is Roubaix. And this city is also very known for deprivation and youth, young people at risk of precarity, school dropping, delinquency, etc. And when I discussed with the young people, but also with the people who work with them, such as a social worker, etc., it was also we also noticed that there is a lot of money spent, so million from the European Parliament, the European at the European level, that it was supposed to be spent for improving the social condition of these young people. But when after discussing with the direct concerned people, we just noticed that the money does not achieve them. Why? Because it comes from the top, right? And then we have several layers, like Europe, then this region, and then the city, and then the mayors, etc., and then maybe the social workers, etc. And at the end of the day, the money is spent on the salaries of those people occupying those positions, but not necessarily directly to the young people who needed the most.
Quickly, one more question would be when you said about the mayor trying to pay the penalty or the tax, you mentioned it as tax. Is it because they want to keep this kind of ghettoization because they want an enslaved? Is it to project the foreigners are a threat, or is it to enslave and have like a minority that is dependent, or is it just purely racism? Like, what do you feel?
I think it's also linked with the whole world order where we live in. So the world order we know is racist. We still see colonial logics, etc. But it is also we live in a world that is functioning in a liberal system and neoliberal system. So liberal system will prioritize values such as individualism. So nowadays we just think individually instead of collectively. And neoliberalism is an economic philosophy that will foster the free market. So at the end of the day, even if we have a mayor who has good intention to, improve social mixing, at the end of the day, these rich people have the possibility to choose where they want to live. So if they are not happy with their neighbors anymore, they will start to leave. And this is what we call the white flight. So even if we manage to develop laws, measures where we can have brown, black people occupying and living in a neighborhood, there is a phenomenon called white flight, that when white people start to feel in a minority position, then they leave. And if they leave, it means that they're going to spend their money somewhere else. So there is also this economic regulation that needs to be taken into account when discussing these topics. Because maybe, like I said, in the south of France, we know that there are very rich areas in the south of France, and if rich people decide to live in a beautiful area, and then with those social mixing law, we start to have the inclusion of more deprived people, they will naturally, because they can afford it, they will naturally leave those areas for other areas. So maybe the mayors of those cities also think like that, but there is also the racist element that is also very well known in the south of France as well. So those elements can totally intersect.
So the next question I have is about what about these policies? Like, how does it affect? Because France is not just the Île-de-France, which is in Europe. It's also in French Polynesia, French Guyana, and other Corsica and other places. So, how does these policies affect those communities with urban planning and then discrimination against those communities?
I don't really know because I did not really worked on those geographical areas. But if they are part of the French government and French legislation, they have the same ones. I should say, mm-hmm. But for example, there is some situation that we can see in Guadeloupe or Martinique, which are located in the Caribbean, where, for example, simple access to drinkable water mm-hmm. is very complicated. We can see that we have French counterparts. There are French counterparts. When they open their tap water, for example, we can see black water coming from their tap water, and it's very difficult to see that actually this is France. This is also part of France and the French
territory.
Territory, yeah, it was like countries. So the fact that these people are very isolated, but also from former colonies and also from racial minority backgrounds, explain how marginalized they are, and they suffer from conditions where they are actually not very much considered as French citizens, but mainly as secondary citizens.
Mm-hmm. So this is where the laïcité model is being misused, or like it's not used properly also either, right? Without a laïcité thing, I wanted to ask you about the regions. Like, how does even within the Île-de-France, the European France, how does it affect the not just minorities from different ethnic backgrounds, but how does it affect linguistic backgrounds? So, for example, I know that I recently came to know that France has like different regional languages like Occitan, Breton, and many others. So, and these languages are dying. They are originally French from that region, but then they are dying. And the French government, what I heard from the people that I've interacted, they said the French government is not helping. Rather, they want to eliminate these languages. So, is it targeted? Because of course, a language survives with the urban planning as well. Like the community lives together. So, is there a coercion where the French government wants to disperse these people, or is it just the education system? How does it? How do they target?
I like how you link this question with laïcité, because I think there is a link. So laïcité is what we could translate as secularism. And they call for a strict neutrality of very different citizens. And this idea definitely hinders the possibility of studying important dysfunctions such as linguistic dysfunctions, but also dysfunctions related to racism, structural racism, which is more powerful than individual racism. So when racism comes from directly the state and institutions, it is very difficult to combat it. And we need to stop studying issues related to discrimination or the death of languages and inequalities only from social categories and ignoring race and religion. We need to start to talk and study these topics without fear, by including race, religion, but also regional differences, regional categories, and start to highlight even hidden practices that will push us to ignore those subcategories that compose the whole France. So we need to challenge what we call the color religious blindness, and therefore the structural discrimination that results from it. And this also targets the regional languages such as Breton, Alsacien, all these languages that, if they are not practiced, will die. I think there is a mini revival, return to these languages, maybe in school, but I'm not sure if it's the school of the Republic. But people try to reconnect with their
heritage.
Original languages. But for example, if we want to make a link with the Arabic language, I truly believe that the Arabic language in France is not recognized as it must be recognized. This language is...
That was something shocking, I have to say. Like, I found Chinese, I believe, in some places, the marks were in Chinese, but then you have a significant Arab population than a Chinese population, and yet it's as if they want to hide it under the rug.
It's if you just go to other countries, Western countries, for example, if you go to the US, you will see how the Spanish language is recognized and used, even in institutions, even in shops, even on the street. Obviously, same for the UK, the Urdu language. Because of the Pakistani, the strong Pakistani community living in the UK, is also used on a daily basis. I think we can even see the language of Bengali in a specific metro line where the Bengali community is very much present. But for the French, for context, for France, there is a real to completely ignore the Arabic language. And I have to say that this tendency can also be noticed with the regional languages that are part of the French culture. And the Arabic language should be recognized in a better way.
I mean, when you can recognize Chinese, which is far away, and you have a smaller population, why not Arabic, which is a bigger population, right?
It is definitely something that is linked with how we portray Arab people and Muslim people in Western imagination. So this link with what we call Orientalism and portraying Muslims as terrorists, as backward, as violent, oppressing women, etc. And they include everything, even the language, because it's also the language of Islam, of the Quran, of the prayers. So all this is a kind of there is like a kind of mixing of different issues that can be linked to racist and colonial past.
I think I want to end by this final question. How much policing goes on into these ghettos? Because once they're segregated, I think it's also an opportunity for us to come together and, like, share our struggles together with a Senegali with a Moroccan, or a Moroccan with a Sri Lankan, and a Sri Lankan with a Malaysian or Japanese. There's a shared culture, but then it's an opportunity to come together. But then what I find is like they're scared. Is there policing going on where, or is it like because what the social media projects is more about a mafia, these are dangerous zones because of undertone mafia. But then, is it because of mafia thing, or is it policing which subdues these communities coming together?
These areas are very much stigmatized and demonized and portrayed in a way where people will develop fear and a very an imaginative. It's a kind of imaginative geographies where we portray these areas with text, videos, movies that are in great majority distorted and also racist and Islamophobic. So I truly believe that these areas are associated also with Islamophobia and the fact that in great majority we have Muslim communities living there. And it's just a way for the mainstream, the dominant groups to push to the margin these communities because they are communities that they don't want to see. For example, it's very rare to see a mosque in the city center.
Yes.
And that shouldn't be the case. It shouldn't be like that. We need to have at least one mosque that represents that would be located in the prestigious city center. But we have mosques in those marginalized areas, but they don't really. It's not really a problem because those areas are already marginalized areas. So some people say, "Oh, we cannot go to those areas. There are no-go areas." But those areas are also deprived areas. Why would you want to go there? Why would you want to go in those deprived areas where there is a high level of despair and inequalities? But these people, when they want to go to the prestigious areas, these areas are also no-go areas for them, especially for Muslim women. So there is always this very negative perception of these areas, but they never see it through the institutional practices and institutional will to put them into the margin because it's a will. It's not something that was manufactured naturally by the earth, like a desert. It's manufactured by the earth. Here we have a community that is very much segregated and segregated in every way, not just physically or geographically. It's also socially, economically, symbolically. All these things, they are marginalized, and it is manufactured by the state.
With consent, yes. But my question was more about why I suggested you this question in a different way was you have Islam where, okay, you have, you like you said, the youth being unemployed and getting into like theft or robbery or things like that sort. Like that's why it's quote unquote dangerous. But then it's an opportunity for the Muslims to come together and work together and then establish Islam. Like it's a ground to preach. And Islam is antithetical to statical or theft, or like it has strong guns. So why does the community struggle to bring these young people to stay in Islam? And because I think I've asked this question before as well, but like let's say that the concept of littering, this is something that the social media is exaggerating and stuff, but we have in Islam that we are Khalifa on earth, like we are the caretakers of the earth, like we're not supposed to litter. And yet, I'm not saying that everybody is perfect, but we still have to uphold our values. So why do we struggle as a community to encourage others and hold ourselves to a good value? Or is it policing? I know that the khutbahs at least are state given, but as a community, can you elaborate on that?
Obviously, the Islamic teaching will always need to be prioritized. That would be what I expect and what I would hope for everybody, because of those beautiful values that Islam spread. But we also need to think of a context that is located in a socio-economic condition, but also post-colonial racist condition. These people are channeled to be part of a community where they know in advance that they will never be able to find a job. They are a decent job. So we have young kids who don't even dream anymore.
It's like it's the same thing like Malcolm talks about, right? Like you want to be yes, go ahead.
So it's like, if you say if you study you will have a job, etc. Look at us who have studied, who have done so much sacrifices to reach the position that we have, but it's not for everybody. You really need to have like a strong mindset, a very strong discipline, etc. But the mass has been channeled to be part of a specific category. Let's say for women of color, they are channeled to find a job, to occupy a position in services. It's service sector. So meaning
you call it jobs.
Nannies, cleaners, all these, as if it is in our genes or whatever to do those jobs. No, but we are in a position where there is social conditions and political decisions that will push people to act in a certain way. And it's the same for the young boys in those areas. They are channeled to be pushed to be part of those delinquency activities. But it's very hard to be able to go beyond that and be able to see that it's a trap, because at the end of the day it's a trap. But it's the mass that is targeted, and it's targeted by a very powerful body that is institutions and governments and education. Just education, you can ask those kids their experience in education in schools. You will have great majority of testimonies telling you that these kids wanted to do one specific path for studying, I don't know, even in medicine or anything, but they were channeled or discouraged or even discriminated against to be able to succeed. I have plenty of testimonies and person around me who could witness that. We even have Muslim researchers who were able to highlight that the trajectory that we have in education was very much hindered by racist practices.
Oh, inshallah, like I think I'm going to conclude on this point, but inshallah, may Allah make it easy for all of us. And thank you for coming and giving your insights. So anyone wants to contact you can contact you on Instagram, or where would you like? Sorry?
By email.
By email, inshallah. So I'll put it on put your email there, or you can publish. You can find. Where can they find you? Maybe like just email, or like some ResearchGate or something like that.
I have an account on Instagram. I also have an account on LinkedIn and email.
Yeah, sure. So maybe I'll put them that. Like I was thinking of ResearchGate where people can study your papers. Like, do you have ResearchGate?
I have ResearchGate, but if you go to Google Scholar and you put my name, you will find all my articles.
Sure, inshallah. So, Jazakallah khair, Dr. Kawtar. It was a pleasure meeting you, and see you again. Barakallah fi.